This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect. Garland one of the lane, locked to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo TV. Watch over 100 channels of live sports and TV for half the cost of cable. There's no contract and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com. The long wait is almost over. The Cleveland Cavaliers are playing tomorrow or this evening, if you're listening via podcast. And we're going to do one of my favorite types of shows, which is a mailbag episode. Massive thanks on the front end to everybody that submitted a question. And joining me today to help answer these questions is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. Mailbags are my favorite. They're high yield, low effort pods, my favorite kind of pod. And I always go in thinking, oh man, this is kind of feels like a mail in. But we always end up having some fun, interesting conversations out of it. So I'm excited.
We really do. And you know what? Normally I mention this at the end of the podcast, but for anyone that wants to be part of our Discord, the acceptance into that is sending a screenshot of a review on whatever way you consume podcasts, however you want to support us. Just send that to chasedownpod@gmail.com, and we'd be more than happy to send you an invite there. We got a lot of podcast questions from Discord as well as on Twitter. So again, massive thanks, and all the ratings and subscriptions that you give us on whatever platform really do help the reach of the show. So we appreciate it. And we're going to kick things off with a friend of the podcast, Carter, our buddy Waji. He asks, what should the front court rotation look like with Love gone? Are we assuming that Wade is primarily going to be playing at the 4? And we talked about it a little bit on the last episode, but I still think that this is probably the best spot to kind of start off at and go a little beyond what we expect the top 3 big man rotation to be. So what do you envision for the big man rotation now that Kevin Love is a member of the Miami Heat?
Well, I'll tell you what I envision versus what I think JB envisions, because what I kind of envision is the idea that, it's just going to be all Dean all the time when it's not Jarrett or Evan out there, or not both of them really. But that hasn't been the way JB's played it. There have been games where Dean's been a little quieter, where JB's been like, all right, that's fine. We'll just play Caris at the 4 or Isaac at the 4. And, those lineups I think have done pretty well. So I'm probably empirically wrong for preferring, just always playing Dean. But I like the size that Dean brings. I like that you can still kind of maintain your big identity. We joked on the last podcast that all of a sudden Cavs ain't so big, despite being this kind of legged, this team who's known for being a team that plays, these enormous lineups. All of a sudden, they're only really playing 3 dudes who are taller than 6'8". So if Dean is only playing, 10 minutes in a game, you're small a lot of the time. So I want to see a lot of Dean Wade out there if it's up to me. But, ultimately, I'll be interested to see how steadfast JB is in giving those Dean consistent minutes.
Yeah, I'm very curious about it. Honestly, how Dean Wade looks is one of my biggest questions going into this post All-Star stretch, because I do think he didn't look like himself. He didn't look like early season Dean Wade when we saw him come back from injury. And I kind of hope that, a week off, Cavs obviously had the opportunity to practice. Very, very grateful that the practice post All-Star break didn't go like it did last year, where Caris LeVert had a serious ankle sprain and it seemed like we had 3 injuries coming out of this week off. Doesn't seem like that's been the case. Which is already a step in the right direction. But I definitely foresee a lot of Dean Wade being that third big. I think he is probably more able to play small ball 5 even than Kevin Love is at this stage of his career. So I foresee him being used. And honestly, like if Dean gets in foul trouble, or let's say you do get a little banged up, I know we've talked about this before, but I don't really hate the Lamar Stevens at power forward minutes. Like if you need to use him kind of on a spot minute basis, I don't expect him to be part of the regular rotation. But let's say you're playing a team like Charlotte that gets up and down the court, that plays 4 or 5 out a lot of time, or 4 out with a roller. Like I think Lamar having his body in there to provide some defense, even though he's only 6'6", he really does kind of play up and defend up very well. So I kind of foresee him being that fourth member of the big man rotation, so to speak.
Lamar certainly has a part to play in this team's season now. For whether you're a big Lamar fan or not, he is the last line of defense if Dean or Evan or Jarrett get into foul trouble against the Milwaukee Bucks. He's gonna have to play, because against a team like Milwaukee, or maybe to a lesser extent a team like Philadelphia, you don't get to play Isaac Okoro at the 4. Or Caris LeVert. That would be a hell of a player. Hell of a player. But you don't get to do that. You have to play your bigger guys in those matchups. Obviously, with that last roster spot notwithstanding. So I do think that is another piece of fallout where, it was clear Lamar was getting those minutes over Kevin in the short term, though I think that was more about not putting him in mop-up duty. But even in that Philly game, Lamar got in before Kevin. So I think that ultimately he's going to have to probably play some real minutes in a game, and perhaps even in the postseason, which frankly I was not expecting a month ago, but that I don't see any other way it can play out.
Yeah, I agree. And I've heard a few people make a big deal about Lamar playing in the Philly game. And it was 4 minutes, let's be clear. And
also, that was a classic JB's mad at the fellas.
Right. It was 4 minutes and you're down a bunch and you need some stops. Like that's a spot where you're putting in Lamar Stevens to help get you some stops, more so than you would Kevin Love at that point. So I think we have been kind of on the same page with Lamar throughout this year, where we like him within the right context. And honestly, I like playing him as a small ball 4. I like the minutes he gives there. I don't expect him to be part of the regular rotation. I think that's going to be Dean Wade as the third big.
Agreed.
And obviously we'll see if anything comes from the buyout market, how they utilize that last roster spot. But maybe it's just Diakite, right, as the break class in a case of emergency big. So we'll see what happens there. But speaking of the buyout market, Matei asks, do you think the Cavs bringing in Danny Green caused the Kevin Love buyout request? And who is a realistic buyout option as a backup center? Do you want to take that first, Carter?
Sure. No. No, we didn't. Kevin had already been benched and taken out of the rotation for the foreseeable future before the trade deadline, before Danny Green was even an option. So, no. It
was after the Knicks game. I believe they went 9-3 after that move.
Yeah, I do not foresee that being the case. I just it just doesn't seem like that. Maybe it's just another body in front of him, but like I don't think that Kevin was like, Danny's here, I got to get out of here. That just seems unlikely to me. And then with regards to realistic buyout option, we talked about this a little bit on the last pod. I am warming up a little bit to someone like Serge Ibaka. Just a guy who's seen a lot of playoff minutes in his career. A guy that, might not have a lot of juice left, but can do something a little different than what Robin can do. He has a mid-range jumper that is somewhat reliable. He's hit some threes in his career, not a ton, but some. Might block a timely shot. He's one of those vets where you go, well, if he's got it going on a certain night, he might look pretty good. He might not have it going almost every night in a way that like you can probably rely on more consistent output from someone like Diakite. But I think if you went veteran hunting, that would be the guy I would chase.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of moves that have really pandered to you. Maybe you look at someone like a Derek Favors and pander to me a little bit.
Yeah, buddy. That would be nice for you.
That I've been pining for a really long time. I don't know if he's got anything left in the tank, but
I feel like the Derek Favors thing really threw me off. I remember you were just like, throw the mid-level at him. I'm like, whoa.
That was a darker era of the podcast. Let's be honest.
You rarely surprise me on the pod with takes, but your Derek Favors love, I was like, really? Okay. I don't hate Derek Favors, but all right.
He's a big body, and you might need a big body to throw some fouls at Joel Embiid or Giannis. So who knows? But honestly, I think when it comes to the backup center position, and let's be clear, it's third string center or maybe even fourth string, because you're probably going with Dean Wade before a lot of these options at the 5. A lot of it's probably going to be dictated by what JB's seen in practice. Like, how does Diakite look? Does he understand the defensive concepts? Do you feel confident about your ability to throw him in a pinch? Or would you rather have a battle-tested veteran like a Serge Ibaka? So, honestly, how you evaluate that is probably not something that we're able to figure out from the outside. But going back to the initial question about if Danny Green caused the Kevin Love buyout, not directly, but I think I lean a little more towards it being another body, right? When you're already out of the rotation, you're only going to really play if there's an injury. Having Danny Green is just another guy. Like Danny Green, you might even throw him some minutes at the 4 if you're already doing that with Okoro and Caris LeVert, right? Like you can get a little weird with the lineups because of how much defensive talent you have at the center position. So I don't think it directly impacted that. And when you look at where Kevin Love went in the buyout market, it was where he had the most opportunity to play, right? Like we've talked about how teams make concessions in team building all the time, right? Like for the Cavs right now, the 3 is a bit of a question mark because we have such solid options at 1, 2, 4, and 5. For the Miami Heat, Kevin Love's the second best front court player. Like there's no other playoff team where he'd even be in the conversation for starting. And I don't know if Miami's going to go that direction, but there's probably an argument for that, right? So playing time was a big factor and certainly understandable.
Yeah, it will be, I guess we'll never know, but ultimately, I don't know if that was the difference. Even if it was another piece of ammo in the decision making, I would be surprised if that was the difference. But let's stick on the buyout and free agent market with a question from Chase. Justin, would you like to see Moses Brown return for some backup center depth, or do you not feel that backup center is as big of a concern?
All due respect to Moses Brown, but I'm not really interested in that. Oh geez, you're really not interested as you're coughing all over your mic. No, I think I would go with a veteran option over Moses Brown. The defensive lapses with him down the stretch last season were very frustrating, and while he's kind of exciting as an athletic prospect, he's also been with some really smart organizations that, like, if the Clippers thought that there was a valuable player there with Moses Brown, I think they would have retained him because that's a real need for them, right? Having some continuity and depth there. So love Moses Brown. He was fun. He can do some really fun things, but I think the Cavs, what we're really looking for and what they seem to prioritize is lineup continuity and not really compromising your defensive principles no matter where you go within a rotation.
The other thing is, like, the kind of stuff we're going to ask Moses Brown to do, like, not that different from the stuff we're going to ask Robin Lopez to do. Be a rim protector, be a drop big on defense. Obviously a little bit more of a vertical threat, Moses Brown, but like, I've been on this roller coaster. I don't need to ride it again. Like I feel like he is like, he's a helpful player in spots, but like, I don't think we trusted him last year to be a postseason contributor, and I definitely don't trust him this year. I'd rather go with a more steady veteran who can, provide a little bit more stability for the team, even if they're not playing, than a prospective player who we've already seen. So it's not like a true lottery ticket. Like, we kind of know who Moses Brown is. So I've seen his name more than once, but I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was fond of his time here, but I think at this point we're more than confident in what we have to complete the regular season. So all moves are going to have a little bit of that postseason perspective in mind, right? Like, Cavs are in a really good position. They're likely going to have home court going into the playoffs. What you're looking to add with that last roster spot is, in a pinch, are you able to throw this guy in? And like, it's never going to be a good situation if you're thrown into that, but maybe there's a chance that you're going to be able to hold water with a veteran if you do go that direction.
Yeah, so it's the old, like, even if someone like Ibaka can only give it to you 1 out of every 5 games, if you're lucky enough to have the game you need him be one of those 5, you're feeling pretty good. Whereas Moses, I just feel like he's a guy who just isn't ready to be a playoff player yet, and that's no slight.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty common with young bigs, right? Like Evan Mobley is an exception. I thought David made a great point of that when he was on with you, which like he had to adjust his defensive expectations because like Tristan Thompson was a phenomenal defender for the Cavs in those championship runs or those finals runs. And it took him 5 years to really understand team defense. And certainly with the defensive standard that the Cavs have this year, that's not something that someone like Moses Brown's going to pick up very quickly, or any young big really. But I do love this question from World Bow Free. He asks, have the Cavs done enough on a developmental level over the last 2 years? Do they undervalue Lauri Markkanen and or utilize him properly? And I'm going to actually cite our podcast on the top of this because we had Chris Fedor on over the course of the offseason, and he mentioned that the Cavs were expecting a breakout out of Lauri Markkanen, that he was the closest thing to a fourth member of the core, which we found surprising. Like we at the time, we thought it was going to be Colin Sexton, but they felt confident that he was on the verge of a breakout. And I'll let you answer the developmental parts of this, but in terms of undervaluing Lauri, I think people forget just how good he was for the Cavs last year. And the best stretch of his season came as the team was struggling the most. So I think it got overlooked even more because those last few months of the year, he was averaging, I think, on like a 60 true shooting percentage, 18 points per game, really being a valuable contributor for them down the stretch. And I think they set the foundation for what he's been able to do this year, because even though he didn't practice in the offseason for playing at small forward, they moved him at small forward. It helped unlock part of his game. And what you saw this year was him actually having an offseason to practice and develop his game to play at that position. And Utah has kept him at small forward for that reason. And he's been the primary option for him. So I definitely think the Cavs played a major role in his development. But how do you think the Cavs have done overall from a player development standpoint, Carter?
I mean, it's hard to pick nits. I mean, they're a team of 20-year-olds who are awesome. That's a good indicator of good development. I do feel like sometimes this is an oversimplified question because of we've been lucky enough to talk to people like Jamal Richardson who works with Darius and Dylan both in the offseason and over the All-Star break. Darius doesn't run from the grind. He doesn't just hang out in Cabo all week. He goes home. I saw
that on the IG stories.
He goes home and works. But, we know how big of a cocktail that development is. It's not just team good development. Is the team good? Does the team have a good plan with the individual coaches that these players use? How hard are the players working? I think Darius has gotten better over the past few years. I think Isaac has gotten better over the last few years. I think Evan has gotten better in small ways year over year. We've seen Jared add to his game. Like, all evidence points to development being good, and their ability to identify traits that maybe that other teams didn't identify. AKA, what if Lauri played 3 and was on ball a lot more? That stuff points to a good development staff. So yeah, I would say they've done enough. And I think I kind of sense World Bow Free, who I believe is a musician. I forget who he plays for, because I think he deleted his main account. He just has it was
Pink Floyd, if I'm not mistaken.
My God.
Just a subtle flex from him.
Yeah, we're losers. I do think he's kind of barking up the tree with the Lauri addendum that maybe the Cavs didn't deploy him properly, but it's I feel like that's kind of might be doing a little disservice to Lauri and the work he did this summer in this new role. So the Cavs, I think, opened the door for him to be playing more as a wing offensively. And then he went ham all summer, went nuts for the Finnish national team in Eurobasket, and he took a leap, but I don't think it was for lack of belief from the Cavaliers.
Yeah, and you're always going to have a statistical leap when you are the lead option on a team, right? Like he is the number one scoring option for the Utah Jazz, and that wasn't going to be the case on the Cavs, right? Like you had Darius Garland, who was averaging 25 and 10 after the All-Star break. Jared Allen was an All-Star. Evan Mobley continued to get better, right? Honestly, Carter, I would go as far as to say I think player development is the greatest strength that the Cavs have. Like I think that consistently we've seen growth, and part of why I'm confident of where they're at right now from a coaching standpoint, from a roster construction standpoint, is guys keep getting better. I think Darius is having the best season of his career. I think Jared Allen has had the most well-rounded, and you've seen the growth in his playmaking and on other areas. Evan Mobley's growth has been very noticeable as well. And even looking at Dean Wade and Lamar Stevens, these are undrafted guys that you feel confident throwing into a rotation. And Dean looked to have taken a major step forward. I'm not going to give them credit for Donovan Mitchell's growth because a lot of the offseason came with him not being on the Cavs. We talked to Tony Jones about how he really took accountability for last season and wanted to get better. And obviously some of it's the context of the team around Donovan that's helped accentuate the growth that he's done. But I really do feel like player development is one of the greatest strengths for the Cavs. And as long as you keep seeing these guys getting incrementally better and better within the context of the team, I'm going to continue being confident in their player development moving forward.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And ultimately, I think Lowry has, deserves everything he's gotten. I think he's really earned what the year he's had, and I'm happy for the guy. I did not. He's got to be on the short list of all-time Cavaliers I did not expect to like and ended up liking quite a bit.
That was someone I was pining for at the deadline that year, but I was also pining for Andre Drummond. So you win some, you lose some. Related to this, actually, Empire Reacts asks, who's the most improved player on the team this season? This is a bit of a tricky one, and I'm going to remove Donovan Mitchell from this because, like I said, I don't think you can necessarily attribute. Obviously, some credit goes to the Cavs, and I think DG, Allen, Mobley, having those guys to play with really helps them. But I'm going to take Donovan Mitchell out of this to make it an even more interesting question. Who's your answer, Carter?
I think it's Darius. Did I steal your answer?
You took my answer.
Well,
yeah,
you shouldn't have given it to me first, but I will respectfully hand it right back. Give me your Darius case.
I think him making the adjustment as seamlessly as he did, and not only making the adjustment to playing with Donovan Mitchell, but missing so much of the start of the regular season, and then coming into that Boston game, his first game, really full game with the Cavs, high pressure environment, and just tearing it up. The fact that he's having the best season of his career with everything that's gone wrong with the eye, with the sprain on his thumb on his shooting hand, playing with another high usage guy in Donovan Mitchell, I think that he's really shown impressive growth, and it shows up in the reduction in turnovers. He's taking such good care of the basketball compared to last year. It shows up in the fact that his defensive metrics, every single catch-all metric, every defensive metric there is, it has shown that he's grown and he's improved. And some of that was already there last year, that he was kind of a break-even defender, but he's really turned into a solid positional defender, someone that goes out and gets steals, that he's kind of really made the commitment that I'm not going to be the breakdown in the defense. And of course, if there's going to be a switch and he's on a big 6'6", 6'8" player, he's going to be at a size disadvantage, but he's not falling asleep off ball. He's not losing shooters routinely and the type of team breakdowns that really hurt your defense overall. I just think it's the most well-rounded season I've seen from him, and something that wouldn't be necessarily evident just looking at the box score stats.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's a few things. It's the fact that he's so seamlessly coexisted with Donovan Mitchell, without and really in a lot of ways maintained his grip as the true floor general for this team. It's the fact that the shooting efficiency has stayed super, super high, and I feel like he's just in even more control of the offense, as we said. He was having 7-8 turnover games, like not all the time, but relatively frequently last year. Games where you just were like, what are you doing, man? Like, this offense cannot afford to have this level of, they did not have that kind of margin for error for him to be messing up the way he was messing up in some of those games. And part of that is all the focus of the defense. I'm sure it's nice having Donovan out there. People are probably a little less likely to help off of him. But, I just think he's done everything with the opportunity and become a true volume scorer on a lot of nights. And, really, I feel like if last year was what we thought was him shedding his reluctance to shoot, this year is really him doing so. The fact that his volume has stayed as high as it is, despite having a very ready-made excuse to have his volume drop back off and go back to, just I'll pass every time I get a chance, Darius, shows a matured understanding of the game. And the fact that he knows that, hey, sometimes a 6 out of 10 shot for me, because I'm so freaking good, is better than an 8 out of 10 shot that I might be able to generate for someone else.
Yeah, and if the thumb is fully healed after this break and this time off, I would like to see the 3-point volume get back up, because I think that was something he did a better job earlier in the season. Obviously, there is a valid explanation there with the injury that he had. And it's a credit to him that even when he does kind of go through these stretches where he's not 100% healthy, he still really finds ways to be effective, right? Like Philadelphia, not really taking a lot of threes, but getting to the rim against a very good defensive team with a lot of length. And I just think that shows kind of the growth and maturity in his game. But you're right. He completely still has the grips on the offense. It's his show. It's his offense to run. And I just think he's done a terrific job of that.
Absolutely. Honorable mention, I think, has to go to Evan Mobley over the last couple months on the offensive side of the ball. He has really, really taken a leap. But on the aggregate, I think I would give the nod to Darius. However, let's keep
Evans.
Up.
Yeah, Evan's been so impressive, man. But yeah, you go ahead, read the next question.
Yeah, our dear friend, our worry warrior, Toby asks, will we often see a 4-guard lineup, and should we use Okoro more as a screener?
I'm going to be a jerk here, and I hate being a jerk, but I guess it depends how we define guards, because I really do consider Isaac Okoro to be a wing. Like, he's more of a 2-3, a swing man in that sense. I just don't think we have 4 guards to use.
Sure we do. I think Caris is a guard-esque player. He's wing. Okay. He's guard/wing. More than Isaac, I would say, just in terms of archetype.
If Caris
this is such a semantic argument. You know what he means. He means Caris and Isaac.
Yeah. I do think you're going to see that a little bit then. I think they are going to play more kind of 4 out or 4 playmakers with a big, because that's really what the Cavs have done such a good job of this year within the offense, is even when they don't necessarily have a lot of shooting to generate spacing, they generate spacing with basketball IQ, playmaking talent, a lot of guys getting involved. And I think the most important thing for them, and the second part of this question, is yes, we should use Isaac more as a screener. I think that's been part of unlocking his game. And I really feel like when we see teams hide someone on Isaac Okoro, he needs to be involved in those small screens, right? Like, he needs to be setting a screen, because that gets the defense to start rotating. That mobilizes the defense. You're getting that weaker defender involved in the offense. I thought they did a tremendous job of that in the second game against Memphis, where Okoro was basically hunting Ja Morant by getting him involved in those actions. I think that that's a very important thing, that anytime you see that over these last 21 games, that they try to utilize Isaac Okoro in that way, because that's going to need to be an adjustment in the playoffs. And teams might have a second adjustment to that that we'll need to see if JB's got a counter for that, if they find ways to maybe get that defender switched off him, so Isaac's not a real threat there. But I think maintaining the offensive efficiency that they have with that lineup involves using Isaac Okoro as that screener.
Something that I've always kind of held up, because our dear friend and colleague Chris Manning over at Locked On Cavs has been hollering about JB using Isaac as a screener for like 2 years now. And I've always said, like, well, that's all well and good, but you can't do that when you've got Jarrett and Evan out there. Like, there's just not enough space. And if there's one thing this Kevin Love move opens up, is more minutes at the 3 or the 4 with Isaac, or 3 where Dean's out there. So you have Evan at the 5. So you have, three shooters and then, Isaac and Evan, it's a lot easier. It's just a lot easier. It's a better use of your time. It's when you have both your bigs out there, Isaac as a screener and a pick and roll kind of just only serves to gunk things up. Because both those bigs, both their defenders will still be hanging around the hoop, or at least one of them. So, it just gets a lot easier. I think when we have seen him serve as the screener, it's worked pretty well in a very, very small sample. I wish if I were a better podcaster, I would have pulled this up, the play type data, but I'm not. But when we've seen it, I think they tend to get good results because Isaac, while not being a hyper skilled offensive player, has a good feel for the geometry of the floor, and I like the passes he's made out of the short roll, and also he so rarely gets to have an advantage attacking the hoop, and he's a pretty capable finisher. So ultimately, yes, I do think, especially in those lineups, we will see Isaac used as a screener, and I think he'll be relatively successful doing it.
Yeah, I think that it's a real opportunity when you're staggering throughout the course of a game to use Isaac Okoro as a screener, because it's interesting. You can go on the NBA Optics site and it shows you how many screens per game you get from different players. And even Garland and Mitchell. Mitchell screens for Garland 4 times a game. Allen screens over 11 times a game for Garland. Mobley screens 11 times for Garland, right? They utilize a lot of guys to set screens, and that's not even factoring in those off-ball actions that the Cavs run. So I think that there's an opportunity to do that, and I'm surprised Isaac as a screener works as well as it does within the starting lineup. But I think a large part of that is it's usually a split cut, right? It's not using Isaac as the roll man, because you just know that opportunity is not really going to be there in the paint with Allen and Mobley. But I think they've gotten very creative with it, but that's going to be an aspect of the offense that I'd like to see them build off of, because I do think it's going to be really important when you talk about getting this offense to translate to the postseason.
Absolutely, buddy. It's going to be fun. It's they're in a lot of ways, their identity is still so flexible. We think of them as this team that's playing these two towers at all times, but because Evan also serves as the team's primary backup center, they're going to experiment quite a bit with Dean, with Isaac, with Caris in those spots, depending on the matchup, and it's going to be fascinating to see how they play it. But yeah, Tony asks, Jesus, you have been stepping all over my transitions, brother.
It's because I was trying to get to an ad read, but
it's fine. Go ahead and take us there.
No. I was going to say, while the Cavs might be experimenting, we will not be experimenting with our video and conferencing, because we are so happy with the support that Zoom provides. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects.
If I was as happy with you as I was happy with Zoom as our video conference provider, I think this pod would be going a lot smoother. I'll tell you that much, Jack.
I've been trying to get to that transition, and you were doing the right thing. To your credit, you were doing the right thing. You're trying to
you laid out and then asked me to pick it up once more. I'm calling that one user error, Justin. But you know who I'd never call user error on is Zoom. Just kidding. Tony asks, is Caris in the long-term plans, or did they let him walk without trying to re-sign in the offseason?
I guess that's going to be something that we're going to find out. I would be very surprised to see him just walk. I think in all likelihood, conversations about his willingness to be part of the team moving forward were had prior to the deadline. I would expect that the Cavs kind of evaluated all options, because they're a team that does make a lot of transactions in every transaction window. I'm sure that they probably looked at the availability of Kevin Love. In fact, Chris Fedor reported earlier today that they did look at what options were available on the trade market for Kevin Love. And I think Caris being here still kind of reflects that he is part of the long-term plans, but we'll see. We'll see if there's an extension. We'll see if they let it go to free agency and maybe explore a sign and trade or whatever the case may be. But right now, I kind of expect Caris LeVert to be on the roster next season.
Yeah, I think I think that question might be kind of fundamentally flawed. because I don't actually think it matters that much if Caris is in the long-term plans as to whether they try to re-sign him in the offseason.
Right.
Ultimately, this is an asset management game as much as it is a team building game at this level. If you're Kobe Altman, Mike Gansey in this front office, and we have seen teams who let assets walk for nothing, really suffer as a result of the talent drain. You can make up for it, but like, here's the thing about the Cavs is the way you typically make up for that kind of stuff is like smart drafting, which Cavs kind of don't get to do too much of. They make up with it with being a free agent destination. Like, Cavs aren't going to have much more than mid-level ever in the near future. So like, you have to be really, really smart about who you let walk out the door. And that's why I expect Caris to be here next season. Even if the team is like, we think he's part of the long-term future, but we're still not 100% sure. I think no matter what, he's going to be here unless they just cannot come to terms, which is possible. It happens all the time. It happened with Jalen Brunson in Dallas. But I would say them not coming to terms is not the same as letting him walk without trying to re-sign him. I think I see almost no outcome where the Cavs do not try to re-sign Caris LeVert.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to frame it. And obviously, you take a risk when you let someone get to unrestricted free agency, right? Like, I think the Jalen Brunson example is really informative. So we'll see if there is an extension. But like you said, even if it's just asset management, which I hate talking about players in that way. Like, I hate when it's a person game, but it's the reality of operating as, you have to operate as an over the cap team moving forward, even if you're not in the luxury tax. So I think the way you framed it was very smart.
Thank you. I'm a very, very smart person, Justin.
I'm going to launch into these Caleb questions. He sent them in on Twitter and he asked us 3 questions. And you know what? I like them all so much. I let him get all 3 in on the podcast. But we'll start off with this. Where do you think the Cavs will finish in the standings? I'm sticking with my prediction. I think they're getting 3rd. I think they're overtaking Philadelphia. Philly's got the toughest schedule left. Embiid's health. He's talked about how he's a little bit banged up still. Cavs have the easiest schedule. It's going to be a little hairy here after the All-Star break. I think actually this first weekend is going to be really, really damn important. Denver's the best team in the West. You're playing them right away. I saw that the Cavs are 3-point underdogs against Atlanta, who Cavs will be playing road back-to-back, while Atlanta, that's their first game after the break, and you have that dead coach bounce. And then Toronto, 3rd game in 4 nights. Like, that's not an easy stretch to start off your post All-Star break. But after you get those tough games, it does get easier. But honestly, I think we kind of want to see the Cavs tested. Like, we want to see them rise to the occasion in some of these games. So I think it's going to be very, very informative. But right now, I'm sticking with prediction of 3rd. Where are you going, Carter?
I think you have to predict 3rd, actually. They're 2 games back of Philly.
That's bold. Right.
You have to predict it. I don't think that I like, even if it's like a 60% likelihood, I think it's probably at least like a 60% likelihood, because Philly has an absolutely brutal schedule coming up. They do have health concerns. And then you just look at the Cavs schedule. I tweeted this earlier today. In the Cavs' final 21 games, they have 10 home games and 11 road games. So you go, okay, maybe not the best on the road, but that's a little tough. But 8 of those road games, Justin, are baseball series road games. Yeah. Where they are landing in Miami, playing a game, having a day off, playing another game in Miami. It's such a different toll on the body to have to be just hopping from flight to flight to flight and constantly unloading and reloading up in different hotel rooms. It's just different. They only have 2 back-to-backs left, including these first 2 games back after the All-Star game. So if you are a person like me who can sometimes go through Cavs withdrawal, it's going to start spreading out a little bit. Only 1 more back-to-back.
Isn't it ridiculous that the week starts on Thursday, but yet we still get 3 games this week? Like, that's nuts.
It's nuts, but you look at that 3 and 4, and that's really one of the last challenging stretches they have in the schedule. They are playing 12 games against teams under 500 of those 21, and against the team against the league's very, very best, the top 4 in each conference, they only have 4 games left. Versus Denver, at Boston, versus Philly. And so 3 of those 4 are home games. So, ultimately, you look at take your fan aside, you just look at the quality that the Cavs have displayed this season, and the math tells me that they should finish 3rd. So that will be my prediction. Though, if they don't, I'm not going to be like pushing the panic button. Philly's a good team. Philly might overperform their schedule. Good teams like Philly do that a lot. And if they overperform their schedule, I think it's tough. But if Philly performs as I expect them to do, and the Cavs perform as I expected them to do, I think the Cavs can make up that gap.
Well, you're crediting math. I'm crediting my plums. I feel it in my plums, Carter. The Cavs are getting 3rd. Before we get to Caleb's other question, I want to go, let's get to this one first. Mountains or the sea? This little fun one. Do you prefer mountains or the sea, Carter?
I haven't spent enough time around mountains, I've only done like a little bit of like LA hiking, those kind of mountains, but not like I haven't been to like Denver, and I've never been skiing or snowboarding in my entire life. So I don't feel qualified to answer this one, but I'm sure I'd love both. I'm not a very I'm not like someone who gets super like brand loyal. I just like nice experiences.
That's fair, and I guess the guy that works in video games, not much of an outside guy, is what I'm getting.
Screw off.
as you podcast from your basement,
wearing a World of Warcraft T-shirt.
Oh God, hilariously on brand. I'm definitely a mountains guy. I know I just spent 2 weeks in Mexico, and my complexion still looks like this. So I'm much more of a mountains guy. Love
got married in the mountains. That's no other indicator, no better indicator.
That's true. One of the best places on earth. Banff, love it there. Denver, I love as well. I've gone snowboarding in Vail. I actually haven't gone snowboarding since my knee surgery. My right knee is absolutely busted still. But the mountains give me life. They rejuvenate me, and the whole Banff area actually. If someone wants to visit Canada, I definitely recommend checking out there.
Shouts to Cavs digital extraordinary Matt Gold, who is currently listening to this podcast, who just spent some time in Banff. So, you're truly an evangelist, Justin.
Shout out the Golden Boy, and his other question, Carter. Caleb, I can't believe we're giving you 3, but they're all interesting. How worried about our offense are you when we get to the playoffs? How do you think it will function in the playoffs?
I think the function is fine, like in terms of like, I think schematically the offense is good enough. If that makes sense. I just don't know if we're going to make enough jumpers. And how much are we going to believe in our offensive scheme if those jumpers aren't falling? Are the guards going to start breaking it and just saying, I got to just go be a hero? Yeah. Those are the questions.
That's my concern as well.
My questions are really personnel based, much more than scheme based. I like the offense we run. I think when we get into our sets quickly, when they execute crisply, when they set good screens, when they make good reads, I think it works really well, and I think it's really hard to defend. But most players on this team have not seen playoff defense and how ferocious it is. Is Dean going to be able to hit those left wing or right wing threes with dudes flying at him at full speed? And having scouted a lot of these pet actions, we've seen pretty offenses get gummed up that require a lot of sets because you just start mauling dudes off ball, and but I think the core of what the Cavs do will work, because they do have some very reliable things that they can count on. But we'll see if the players are up to the task, and we'll see how many counters JB and Luke Walton and the whole coaching staff can cook up.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the correct framing. I think I'm very confident in the scheme, but I mean, we've seen in some of these big games too, right? Like I think Donovan Mitchell kind of sometimes can revert back to the Utah mindset where, hey, this is a big game. This is a tough team to play against. when he was in Utah, he was kind of the only one you'd trust to initiate in those moments. And I think trusting the offense is going to be one of the biggest things. And I think that's an area of growth for Darius Garland as well, right? Like, I think some of those late game issues have been a matter of execution more so than scheme, where those guys call their own number when the identity of this team, as we've said a million times, is playing through the bigs and trusting Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. So I really do think it's going to come down to execution and how the core handles those moments. Do they execute? What's the decision making like? And that's going to probably determine how smooth that first round series goes, because I think they are going to be favored in the first round. But do they make life easier for themselves? Do they trust themselves? When you're in the second round, which I think we're both hoping they get to and kind of expecting it, if you get to the second round, are you able to continue to execute, or are you going to start beating yourselves? I mean, we've seen really good teams beat themselves in a series and have to learn from that experience. So that's, I think it really is going to come down to execution more than anything else.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun to see. And it's also going to be fun to see how Darius handles it. Garnetcherl asks, how do you think Darius' game will translate to the playoffs? Pretty confident in Don, but it'll be DG's first run, and the physicality and length could bother him. I want to start with saying, we call him Donnie a lot. I'm also partial to Don.
I like Don a lot. I like Don.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on our dear friend DG?
I'm pretty confident. Like, I think people forget just how great he was in that Brooklyn play-in game. The Cavs were almost out of that game, and he single-handedly was bringing them back, high-fiving dudes on the sideline. And the Atlanta game, he didn't shoot well, but I thought
Atlanta did nothing to take him out of his game. He just didn't make shots.
Exactly right. There's a difference between playing bad and not hitting shots, and I thought that was a game where he just didn't hit shots. He missed a couple point blank layups that weren't really contested. It happens to the best of them, but I think it's important to make that distinction. I do think teams can get physical. I think if you play a series against Brooklyn, they have nothing but length and great defenders. Jalen Brunson is a very, very physical guard as well. It'll be interesting to see how he responds to that, but I really do feel like Garland has become more assertive this year when teams do try to body him up, and he's rose to the occasion and kind of embraces some of that contact. And I think some of that is the physical transformation you've seen where he has gone a little bit stronger. I think it's going to come down to decision making, whether or not it ties into what we said before, but whether or not teams are able to rush his decision making or get him into a mindset where he's calling his own number a little more than he should.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be interested. I don't think he is a killer on switches as a scorer yet. I think he is a killer attacking switches as a playmaker. Seeing the way that the defenses kind of bend towards him, knowing they might have to help a little bit more. To that end, like, I hope he's not, that's why I just want to say, like, hey, Darius, you got to believe in the offense. You got to find your bigs and let them be playmakers against mismatched players that they're stronger than or bigger than. But I mean, my level of concern, not super high. I'm interested to see. I feel like that Miami game was one of the first games we've seen teams say, hey, whoever Darius is guarding is going to go screen for our best player, and the Cavs are going to have, and you guys are just going to have to try to figure that out. They spammed that Jimmy Troy Vincent pick and roll in the fourth quarter, and I thought, to mixed results, I thought sometimes the Cavs navigated it beautifully, and made Jimmy take really, really hard shots. I thought at times they messed up, and that was Evan messing up a little bit too. Sometimes it wasn't just, Darius not being able to hang. Sometimes Evan's footwork wasn't quite right as an on-ball defender trying to navigate screens. Not really a skill set he's used to. I think there's going to be some lessons to learn there, and I actually am kind of grateful for Miami for giving them that tape early on. We'll see how he holds up. But on the offensive end, not super concerned. Obviously he's a player who, if his jumper is not falling, he's not going to have the most efficient game, because he is a shooter after all. That is a key part of his offensive identity. But again, I don't think Atlanta or Brooklyn did anything to engender concern about whether Darius has it in him to get clean looks in the postseason.
Yeah, I think the test is really going to come from more than likely like a Boston or Philadelphia or Milwaukee. I think what those teams can do is going to be more of a challenge for Garland. And I mean, I feel better about it than I would have last year going into a playoff series, right? Like last year when you didn't have Donovan Mitchell and you're relying on Caris LeVert to be that secondary playmaker. Like I feel much better about having Donovan Mitchell next to them. And I just think their success is really going to come down to whether or not they continue to incorporate the big men and how Mobley and Allen do with those possessions. Because I think when those guys are very involved in the offense, they are so damn hard to defend. Which ties into Adam's question, which is if either of Mobley gets hurt, are the Cavs pretty much screwed in a playoff series?
Not in the first round.
I think it could. I actually think it would be more of a blow if Jared Allen was out, because I think you'd be able to survive against a team like New York or Brooklyn if Evan Mobley missed a little bit of time. Like I think you could throw Dean in there and you'd be able to survive that. If it's Miami, I think you'd have issues with Miami. Like I think that would be really tough with either of those guys out. Certainly, like those teams can beat Cleveland even if they are fully healthy. Like I'm not ruling that aspect out, but I don't think it would be completely screwed. But you know, if you're missing a key guy in the playoffs, that's going to make things tough.
Yeah, I think it all depends on what your definition of screwed is. I would say screwed is Cavs have less than a 20% chance of winning the series. And against any of those teams, I don't think that an injury to those two would drop them that low, but it would get them darn near close, especially against Miami. I think Miami's, by a country mile, the scariest first round opponent. I am not interested in dealing with playoff Spoelstra schematically.
Yeah.
And, just all those vets that they can count on. Playoff Jimmy is a different beast. I think they'd be darn near screwed against Miami, but the other teams, I don't know if they'd still be favored, but I think I think they probably would be against those other teams without either of them. And to that end, I would say no, they are not screwed. But against any of the top three, no, not a chance.
Yeah, so top three and Miami, just because of the track record, the experience. Spo, I still probably consider to be the best coach in the game.
I do too.
Certainly not because of Kevin Love. all due respect to our dear friend Kevin Love, but yeah, I just think that they could test them in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they were a game away from beating, getting back to the finals. Like they're awesome.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler shot. Was it a foot on the line? What was the case there? Like
I forget, but
it was a missed shot. It was a missed shot, but you were a shot away from the NBA Finals, and Bam has taken another leap. Like he'd probably be my pick for first team all defense, and his offense has gone even better.
Highly recommend the Cavs try to get to the 3 seed.
Yes. Avoid Miami. Unless Miami ends up at 6. I mean, that's a very realistic possibility. They're 7th right now, Carter.
I'll say this. I'm not tempting them basketball gods, Justin. If we get Miami, if Miami isn't good enough to get to the 5 seed, then I will be less afraid of them.
That's a good take. I like that. Our buddy Vinman from Discord asks, what team outside of the Cavs do you think is poised to make a run in the standings post All-Star break?
Hold on real quick. I like that you call him Vinman, not Vinman.
Vinman.
Like a postman. Longshoreman.
Sometimes I talk weird. Often I talk weird. I'm going to say New Orleans Pelicans. They did it last year. Brandon Ingram's back and healthy. I know Zion's not in the mix, but I think they were showing signs of starting a run even before the All-Star break. I think Brandon Ingram's probably one of the more underrated players in the league. And when the Cavs beat them, I still consider that to be an impressive win, winning in New Orleans against the Pelicans that were on a winning streak. That's a good team that we've seen give teams fits in the playoffs. I think Pelicans are in a great position to make a run.
Yeah, I think you look at a team like Dallas, they have the easiest remaining schedule with a need to win some games. They're the 6th seed right now, so they're going to be pushing. You're right, New Orleans is 28th. I don't know, am I a huge dweeb if I pick the LA Lakers?
No,
because
no.
a lot of people
I think there's enough doubters there that it's not a dorky opinion.
Well, like a lot of people have made the 2018 Cavs jokes, the "we got a squad" jokes about this current Lakers team that they moved some deck chairs around on the Titanic and all that stuff. But people forget, after the Cavs made those trades, they went on a run. They were a lot better with Rodney Hood
glad you went there because
and George Hill and Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance. Like it's not rocket science that when you put players who fit LeBron around LeBron, even if they're just okay, your floor just flies up. And I think that a combination of need, nothing to lose, they'll there's nothing to tank for here, and an easy schedule. I see them making a push.
Yeah, I think it's not a bad take, and people forget what the 2018 Cavs, like George Hill hurt going into the playoffs. I think it was a shoulder injury.
Larry was going nuts. Remember that game he had like 18 and 17?
He was so good, and I think it was a hamstring injury for him going in the playoffs. Rodney Hood was out. Jordan Clarkson even got banged up going into the playoffs. So yeah, if all your big additions aren't themselves going into the playoffs, those additions aren't going to make a difference in the playoffs. Like, I think that does get forgotten with that team, and the SNL skit and everything, all the other jokes with that team, I think aren't taking into consideration context. Carter, how dare people take into consideration or forget to consider context when making jokes? I would never do such a thing.
No, that you are a straight shooter, buddy. Facts over feelings.
Speaking of jokes and shots at teams, Cavs for MVP says, who would your favorite matchup be in the playoffs for the Cavs?
I'm going to go with, I'm going to answer this a way there's no way he intended, which is, who do I just want to see? And I want to see this team play Boston, baby. I want to see it. I'm not saying it's the best matchup. Obviously, you'd rather play other teams. I just think for what I want out of the season, I think Boston is such a tasty matchup from both in terms of, I think the Cavs are built to bother them. And I think even in defeat, they will learn a lot. I think Milwaukee's tough because, like, if you just lose to the Giannis battering ram, I don't know how much there is to autopsy. Yeah. Where I think there's going to be a lot more schematic learnings and growth from a loss to Boston. So, I think this team could take Boston to 6 or 7. And again, if you get to 7, then, it's a toss-up. And then, your odds just are bananas better. I would love to see, a second round Cavs Bucks, a second round Cavs Celtics series. That is the playoff matchup I want to see the most. I think he's saying who do we match up best with, but I think the more fun answer is who do I want to see the most.
Boston is that team for me too. When you're talking about want to see, because it does mean you make it a second round. I'll answer the spirit of the question in a second, but I completely agree with you, Carter. Like, Boston's offense is still very much structured around Jason Tatum making tough shots, and he's one of the best tough shot makers in the league. But that's also difficult, and they don't really challenge the Cavs at the point of attack like other teams do.
I don't think they like guarding people like Darius Garland. I think,
have 2 of those.
Yeah, I don't think they like guarding dudes like that. I think these shifty guards, they are built to guard the Giannis's and the LeBrons and the Lucas and the Durants of the world. They are not built to guard shifty players like Garland or Steph Curry or Donovan. And I think ultimately they are the matchup where I just think it's the coolest styles make fights type of matchup. Real quick note on the Celtics that I've just been pondering on. Are they actually the first truly like 3-point revolution team? Like, there is a lot of everyone credits teams like the Warriors and stuff, but Warriors have spent their entire dynasty playing 2 non-shooters. Boston has 1 non-shooter, 1 true non-shooter in their entire rotation. They have truly built a team out of dudes who take open threes every time they're open. It's just some, like, obviously the ceiling is not there. compared, they don't have the greatest shooters of all time on their team, but like in terms of their total commitment to saying, if you can't shoot and your name is not Robert Williams, you are not allowed to play here, is pretty jarring.
Well, I mean, this is a lot of 2015 Atlanta Hawks erasure, but that's fine. No, it's
but Atlanta at least had bench players who were mediocre shooters. Like,
yeah, I know.
Like literally, like they're bringing Brogdon and Williams and now Muscala. Like they even saw like, yeah, in case Horford gets hurt, we want a different stretch five. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a good take. I haven't given it too much thought. Speaking of the Giannis battering ram, just backing up a second, how annoying is it going to be when Kevin Love starts getting charge calls again now that he's in Miami?
Oh, someone brought this up in the Discord, and I got preliminarily angry, which is stupid because he was leading the league in charges drawn when he fell out of the rotation. But nevertheless, I feel like he was getting jobbed while he was already having a rough month.
Yeah, I don't want to play Milwaukee. I definitely Boston. I would prefer seeing them in the second round. But if we're talking about first round, it's going to be a little slanderous, Carter. I think I'd rather play. I actually have respect for the Knicks. I think they got better with Josh Hart, but I'd rather play the Knicks than the Nets. I think the Nets are just going to be really annoying to play in a series, and they just have so much length. And there's almost like a Toronto element with them of like length at absolutely every position, except they have guys that can move better laterally than Scotty Barnes, and you don't have like a couple weak spots in the lineup. Like, I think Brooklyn would be a pain.
They've got a couple apex predator defenders and Dorian Finney-Smith, Mikal Bridges. They're big. They can shoot. They don't have a ton of on-ball creation, which I feel like the Cavs are really kind of built to snuff out. I think I agree with that take, but I think both matchups would be hard in their own, individual ways. But I just think, like, in a lot of ways, the Knicks do some stuff the Cavs do, but worse, whereas the Nets are just a whole different animal.
Yeah, hopefully we wouldn't get rising stars Quentin Grimes and Julius Randle shooting better than he did wide open in the 3-point contest. But we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I actually think if we get up to 3, the most likely opponent's probably going to be Brooklyn. I think they're going to remain competent down the stretch, but I think Miami and the Knicks probably are going to overtake them, if I had to guess. Let's finish this off with a question from Luke, who said, in the offseason, pre-Mitchell, I asked over/under 1.5 playoff wins, and the consensus seemed to be under. Now I ask over/under 5.5 wins. Carter, where are you going?
Well, brother, I have to say over. I think we're taking Boston to 6 or 7. So that's if that's the case, I'm projecting like minimum 6. Now I think it's a well set over under number. Luke might have a future as a bookmaker, but in the meantime, I think I'm going over. Because I think our likely playoff matchup is Boston, and I think we match up well with them despite them being an amazing, amazing team. And I think we steal a couple games.
Say it.
Over.
Cavs in 6.
No, I won't say that. I won't say that.
I mean, my homer ass now has to say over. If you're going to say over, I was going to say over anyways. Let's be real. But yeah, I'll say I feel good about 6. But I think they'd have a real chance at annoying the hell out of Boston and potentially stealing that series. But it's really going to come down to, like, that's the thing. The numbers say the Cavs are a contender, and I just think that the experience deficit is going to catch up to them. But if it clicks, like if they really put it together down the stretch, and we shouldn't rule that out, right? Like, there's 2 months left of the regular season, and a lot of these guys have been getting better throughout the course of the season. So if the Cavs are at their best, these guys get better over the next 2 months, and the learning curve isn't as steep as we expect in the playoffs. Who knows? Maybe you do have like a Warriors-like run last year, right? Where you don't play some of the teams you'd be worried about playing. You play another team that's missing a starter or two, and it kind of helps you. You get the breaks at the right time, and that gives you the opportunity to gel and make a prolonged run. Like, I could see that playing out. So The Cavs have the makings of a contender. I just think it's going to come down to whether or not they're ready to kind of step up in the moment and really kind of say, hey, we're ahead of schedule. We're going to take over the East now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and boy, would that be fun. I remember even that first game of the season, the second home game of the season, we were hanging out with my brother watching the game, and I've talked with him a little bit about. He's like, no one thought the Warriors were coming as hot as they came on. Yep. Like they just kind of blew past things faster than we thought they were going to, and I think this Cavs team has a lot of the similar kind of DNA pieces that make that possible. But I'm still not going to say it's probable that they go and make a conference finals appearance in year one of this thing. But I think a competitive second round is, winning a series is all I can ask for. I'll be thrilled with a competitive second round. You'll have to peel me off the floor if we make the conference finals.
Oh God, this podcast is going to be impossible to listen to if we play the Sixers in a series, if we play Toronto in a series for some reason, or if we make a conference finals for very different reasons. We would just be so damn obnoxious. Me in particular. I'll disown that. It would definitely be me.
Absolutely, brother.
Carter, let's do some live show planning here. Are you going to be on Monday? Because I know your time off is coming up soon. No,
this is it, buddy. This is it? Yeah. Baby Rodriguez comes Monday the 27th, if not earlier. It can't be later. So you're gonna have to steer the ship for the next 2 weeks. So I'd say the next 4 pods, I will be in pure dad mode. Everyone send good vibes to the fam, and yeah. So it's all you, baby.
Well, an early congratulations to both you and Kyle. I'm super excited and going to be my heart and
little
mind
baby Justin is coming around.
I do want to give you the opportunity. I do want to clear out for a second. If you have any parting thoughts, just like I gave some parting thoughts before going on vacation, you're going to be missing an interesting stretch of Cavs basketball. What do you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, I won't be missing, like 9 super important things. I'm hoping I just, and I'll be watching. So no parting thoughts other than, if I come back a little haggard, if maybe I'm not as sharp, it's kid too. Come on, give me some slack, gang. But I'll do my best, and I'll be tuning in every time. Because God knows I'm gonna be up at 3 a.m. With a child on my chest and needing to find some way to entertain myself because I can't go back to sleep.
Super excited for you, man. Love you, man. I'm so excited to get more posts of Millie, your new child, and Todd, and everything that's coming out. So I'm super excited for you, buddy. I'm going to miss you.
I like that some people might think I have another child named Todd. It's my dog.
Well, of course I'm going to think about the dogs, but I'm super excited for you. I'm going to miss you. Hopefully you don't sound as rusty as I have coming back from Mexico. But you're going to be a little sleep deprived, so I can have some fun at your expense. Big thanks to everyone that submitted questions for this podcast. Honestly, you guys are the best, and we always have a lot of fun answering these. So big thanks to you guys. If you're watching on YouTube and you want to support us, like, subscribe, click notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chasedown's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.